Hello and welcome to Mass Bioed's Career Ambassador Spotlight. I'm Carla Talanian. I'm the Director of Talent and Workforce Development for Mass Bioed. And with me today is Rick Russell, who's the President of Minerva Neuroscience. Minerva Neuroscience is a pharmaceutical company that's focused on bringing new products to patients who are suffering with diseases of the brain and the central nervous system. Rick, I'd like you to explain for our audience, to give some context to what you're going to tell us. What kind of diseases are you hoping to cure?
Yeah, Carla, great opportunity to be here with you and the folks at Mass Bioed. So thanks for this opportunity to talk about Minerva and about the industry. At Minerva, as you said, we're focused on diseases of the brain and the central nervous system. And in particular, our pipeline is focused on really 3-4 key disease areas: depression, insomnia, schizophrenia, and Parkinson's disease. And these are disorders that, the names may sound familiar to folks who are listening in, but they affect tens of millions of patients in the case of depression. And these diseases have, devastating impacts on the quality of life for patients. And there's huge unmet need here. So we're passionate about our research and our focus on trying to find new solutions for patient care in these areas.
Excellent. Can you talk a little bit about the demographics of CNS disease? I mean, how many people are affected by this versus people affected by cancer or heart disease or some of the other major diseases that we're more familiar with?
Yes, CNS disorders are fairly widespread and fairly prevalent across multiple ethnicities. So let's take schizophrenia to start. It affects about 2 million people in the United States. Prevalence is pretty much the same across the globe. And it definitely has a devastating impact on the quality of life of these patients. People may even recall seeing people out on the street. Homelessness is a big issue with schizophrenia patients, as an example. If you look at depression, it's literally tens of millions of patients who suffer from depression. Severe depression affects about 10 million people in the United States alone. And it is quite, widespread and prevalent throughout the course of someone's life. People are very likely to experience a depressive episode, maybe not chronic depression, but clearly there's unmet need there. Insomnia is also extremely prevalent, affects as high as, depending on the estimates that you look at, 1/5 to 1/4 of the adult population will experience some type of insomnia problem in their adult lifetime. And so, again, people, probably anyone knows, if you don't get a good night's sleep, you know how you feel the next day. So clearly sleep is central. And Parkinson's disease, the last one, affects about 1 million people in the U.S. It is what we classify as a neurodegenerative disease. It actually affects the central nervous system, the part of the body that controls movement. And it can be debilitating, and people can be wheelchair bound from Parkinson's disease. So you may remember, George H.W. Bush, the older Bush, that had a Parkinson's syndrome, which led him to be wheelchair bound, and in part contributed ultimately to his passing. So these are severe illnesses that do affect a fairly large demographic.
Mm-hmm. And what specifically will Minerva bring to the table? What makes your approach special?
So we're focused on trying to use novel approaches. That means we're looking at therapies that represent a new approach to targeting these diseases. So they mechanistically work in a unique way. And they're targeted, as we said earlier, towards the areas of unmet need. So we know in depression, for example, not all patients respond to the antidepressants that we have today. And so we need other approaches, unique mechanistic approaches, to try and tackle this disease from a different angle. The same is true for insomnia. We know with insomnia, a lot of medications work, but they also have side effects, such as drowsiness, next day hangover. So we're working at an approach to try and eliminate those in that patient population. And in schizophrenia, the same thing. There's a lot of unmet need with patients who are on chronic therapies, or they have disease for many, many years. They tend to become very withdrawn, kind of unmotivated, apathetic. We're working on an approach that might address some of those issues. And that's really what drives us. We're really looking to really try and make a difference in the lives of these patients by looking at these new approaches, these new scientific approaches to treating this disease. So it's kind of cool. And ultimately it has a bigger purpose, and it's really about the patient.
Excellent. So what do you do as president? What is a typical day in your life like? I'm sure no 2 days are very similar to each other, but just give us a hypothetical typical day.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think you answered the question to some degree. I mean, no day is standard, if you will. Every day is somewhat different. But my focus really as president of the company is on a couple key areas. And I think this is really important for anyone in any leadership position. Ultimately, for me, my core belief is that the company itself is really all about the people. The people are the greatest asset that we have in any company. It's not about, the buildings that we own or any of those physical assets. It's really about the people who are the drivers of innovation, and the people are key to accomplishing the mission, right? Which is to bring these therapies to market and help make a difference in the lives of these patients. I spend a lot of time with employees. We're what we call a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company, so none of our products are yet approved. Spend a lot of time searching them, right? And so we have people in the US, we have people in Europe, and whether I'm talking with them face to face or on the phone or via video like we're talking today, I try to make time to make sure that I connect with them. It's important for people to understand what the mission of the company is. What are we trying to do? And to really understand what their role in that is. And sometimes that can become cloudy over time. Sometimes we forget about the greater purpose of the work that we're trying to do. I also try to make sure that people really embrace culture, and the culture is really important because it defines, kind of how we work together. So we strive to bring people into the company, that want to be collaborative. So that people piece is very important. But we're also a publicly traded company, and we have owners, we have investors. So I spend time making sure that our owners and investors understand our progress towards our goals. We have to raise money from time to time to pay for all these clinical trials and experiments that we run, because we don't sell any products or make any profits. So we work with our investors to try and bring more money into the company over time to fund additional research as necessary. And then, of course, I spend time talking with physicians who would do these medications ultimately. And we also talk to patients as well to understand what the illness means to them. No day is typical because maybe one day is going to be spent mostly with employees. Maybe we have, a lot of focus on an operational issue. Challenges could come up with clinical trials. Maybe we need to get supplies to a certain site in Europe. This current epidemic or pandemic obviously creates challenges too, to make sure that patients can get to the research centers and the clinics, and how do we make sure that that happens safely for them as well as for the doctors, as an example of things that pop up from time to time. But in a way, that's what I love about the job, right? It's not routine. Every day is different. And for me personally, I'm very passionate about the work we do. That's ultimately for patients anyways, and I love working with people and being part of a team.
Excellent. I want to switch gears a little bit now and ask you some more personal questions. So how did you get to be president of this exciting company? Take us from high school to where you are today.
So I always was passionate about science when I was in high school. I pursued a chemistry degree when I was in college, and then I went to graduate school because I couldn't get enough of it, I guess, I don't know, and did graduate work in organic chemistry. But I'll come back to that because I think it's important for students to understand that you don't have to be a scientist to be in our industry. Yes, we have a bunch of scientists in our industry. I'm passionate about science, but I have many colleagues and very close work friends who are lawyers, accountants, information technology specialists, human resource specialists, communication specialists who do not have scientific degrees, and they're very important people in our industry, and very important in terms of contributions to the work that we do. But I did go to graduate school, as I said earlier, and I happened to run into someone who was in the industry, a person who worked at Pfizer. And I knew nothing about the industry, and I was very lucky to meet this person. It was actually somewhat just coincidental through a friend of a friend, and he was telling me about the industry, and it sparked my interest. So So I actually had a chance to apply for some research jobs actually at Pfizer at their research facility in Connecticut. That was my first job offer. But what I loved about this industry in particular is that they invest in their people, and they're committed to developing people. And it's a very nice thing about this industry because we have resources to develop our people, and most people in the industry understand that, a strong workforce and the people, as I said earlier, what really make the company. So I was fortunate to be able to rotate into other jobs in other areas. I actually went into sales, and I did sales. I did marketing. I worked internationally in Europe, and I kind of followed my passion along the way, and did things that I thought would be interesting. I like learning new things. And then I eventually ended up running a small, what we call a business unit, which is basically a division of a company that's focused on a certain therapeutic area. And I did that. And then I actually took a much larger role running a commercial organization for a larger company. The commercial department is comprised of the sales and the marketing folks, communication folks. And then I started running companies. I took a CEO job at a biotech company, which was a very fascinating company working in allergy and immunotherapy. And then I met the founder of Minerva Sciences, actually, as an example of how things can unfold in your career. We had breakfast together. We had a mutual friend. He was looking to bring someone in to help take the company to the next chapter of its life. He was a scientist, a lifelong scientist, not a business person. And he started telling me about his discoveries and how he discovered some of these medications, the one in schizophrenia in particular. And being a scientist, I got excited and I said, please, I need to be on board. I'm all about, trying to discover new approaches to treat unmet needs. So it was kind of if you will, a curvy path for me in my career. But one of the things I would say that was quite helpful for me, and I was always curious and wanting to learn more, was I got good advice from good mentors. I somehow fell into having these relationships with people that were above me in management or even beside me. There were colleagues who largely gave me pretty good advice, and it played out well for me. So that's kind of in a nutshell how I ended up where I'm at today.
Excellent. Yeah, and you definitely touched on the next question I was going to ask was advice for students. And we hear that from a lot of professionals that mentoring and just sort of being open to opportunities is a valuable skill to have, or a valuable trait to have. What do you think right now for students maybe graduating from high school or especially students graduating from college? What are the best areas for them to get into? Just in general, are you looking at manufacturing or clinical research or basic research?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We have so many opportunities in this industry in terms of need. And I think I'd step back 1 minute and say, first and foremost, my advice to everyone is to follow your passion. Please try and do something you're passionate about. You may end up in a job that you're not totally passionate about because you're doing it to step to another level, and that's fine. But really take time to try and identify what it is that really motivates you from within. Because if you do that, you're going to be more effective overall in whatever you choose to do. And you may not know what that is. And I certainly didn't know it when I was leaving graduate school and going into the workforce. I started in the lab as an example, and I had done lab work and research as a graduate student. But what I realized was actually more passionate about just general business. And the job I loved even more than the research was sales. I would have never known that unless I had gotten advice to try a rotation in the sales force, which I did. And I struggled with it at first because I wasn't a natural salesperson, but I learned and I really liked it. And I use that as an example because if you really want to, say, focus on science and do research, then do it. And there's tons of opportunities for lab scientists and research scientists in our industry. We're a discovery-based industry. If you want to go into medicine and be a doctor, do it. Because guess what? We have a lot of doctors that work in our industry. I work with, doctors every day in our company that we have that are helping to run our clinical trials and writing study protocols and working with other doctors who are doing the studies in their clinics for us. So there's tons of opportunities for
Mhm.
physicians and research scientists. But there's also, as I said earlier, opportunities for people that might have a real interest in computer science. We need a lot of computer scientists in our business. Artificial intelligence is extremely important to us. Having systems, automated systems to help support a business, extremely important to us. I actually helped a young woman who was at a law college and graduated last year with a degree in math go into Pfizer and work in their business analytics group. So not a very specific life science degree, say math, but a very important area where in Pfizer they need these business analysts to help them do forecasts for products or value certain businesses. And she's working with the researchers down in Groton and having a really interesting experience down there. She's been at it for about 6 months. I just talked with her recently, and I think she's really enjoyed that opportunity to get into that company, and she's going to be rotating into some other business areas. So if you're passionate about communications or marketing, these are broader skill sets that we need in the industry. So my first advice is there's not really one set way per se from a degree perspective. I mean, certainly if you have a science degree, that's definitely directly related, but you could have degrees in other areas that are also very important and critical to the work we do. I think the most important thing, and you alluded to it earlier, Carla, is when we talked about mentorship, is to don't be afraid to ask people for their advice, for their help. Try to seek internships where you can. We have internships in the industry. Do informational interviews. I mean, I've never, ever turned anyone down that wanted to talk about the industry and get some advice. In fact, I've done the same. As I mentioned, I've had mentors, and no one's ever tried to charge me for advice. It's always usually free, and I've never had anyone turn me down when I ask for advice. And the beauty of advice is you can choose to take it or ignore it. But 9 times out of 10, I have to say I got pretty good advice for the people that I talked to, and it helped shape my career.
Yep, I agree. Yes, everybody, most people do say that. Just getting advice. Everyone loves to talk about themselves in the work that they
Yeah,
do. And
exactly. That's right.
you can learn something from everyone. You might learn more from some than others, but you can definitely learn from everyone you talk to, and it's a great way to just expand your horizons and start thinking about what you might be passionate about.
Agreed.
That seems like a great point to end the interview on. So thank you again, Rick, very much for your time.
You're welcome, Carla. Great to be with you.